my life, I've grown up on Mario. It's just a fact. I played a lot of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Mario Kart Wii, Mario World, all of that. And throughout that time, I've always sort of just ragged on Sonic the Hedgehog because that was sort of the thing. It was Mario versus Sonic. But I feel that rivalry has definitely settled down in recent years. I mean, look at Sonic Racing Crossworlds. They made an entire commercial clowning on Mario Kart World, and that game is still on Nintendo Switch. However, just recently, I finally got to playing through all of the classic Sonic games. Not you. And I have to be honest, holy cow, I was missing out. I was always told that these games define generations, but unfortunately, I always had that negative stigma towards Sonic. I had sprinkles of experience in these games before, but all that was just that I played the first level of Sonic 1 and 2 respectively and couldn't get any further on mobile. I've liked these games so much that I've already replayed all of them multiple times, but I thought of something a little fun. How does the Sonic trilogy on Genesis compared to the Super Mario Bros. Trilogy on NES. Now, to some, that matchup might seem a bit crazy. I mean, these are 16-bit legendary games going up against relics of the 80s. But honestly, I don't really think it matters. Both of these sets of games are trilogies that die-hard fans of their series always come back to replay. So 8 bits more or not, I don't care. I'm putting these games against each other. So that's what I'm gonna do. For each game matchup, I'm gonna see how well these games stack up in 4 categories. 1, control, 2, level design, 3, replayability, and 4, legacy. So without further ado, let's finally settle this debate. Let's see who is better, Sonic the Hedgehog or Super Mario. Up first, to really no surprise, we have Super Mario Bros. On the NES, released in 1985, versus Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, released 6 years later in 1991. Both of these games are known to have their problems, but first let's lay down some context for what's going on here. We'll start with Super Mario Bros., simply because it chronologically came first. The story here is simple. The Mushroom Kingdom has been put under a spell by Bowser and his Koopa Troop. The only one who can reverse this spell is Princess Toadstool, who is being kidnapped by Bowser. The Mario Brothers are the only ones who can stop Bowser and save the kingdom. So you must run and jump through 32 levels of platforming to get to the final castle. Not the most unique story for sure. I mean, Miyamoto literally once said, "I hate books, books all suck, 0 stories for everyone." But it doesn't really matter. In this game, Mario can run, jump, and hit blocks and stuff. I mean, you know, the usual. Most of the time his control scheme here works perfectly fine, but I will admit it hasn't aged the greatest. Especially compared to later games, his air control and momentum physics in this entry aren't very great, and result you in not being able to adjust your jump much if you press A without much speed. It ends up just feeling a little weird, and if you're coming off of later entries in this series, you definitely have to get used to it, but overall, it works. Most of the time, the controls here do feel spot on as you run through the levels, but that was a noticeable issue that I thought was worth mentioning. Now, what's going on with Sonic over here? Well, Sonic's nemesis, an evil scientist named Dr. Robotnik, wants to use the legendary 6 Chaos Emeralds to help power his large robotic weapons in order to take over the world. In the process, he kidnaps all of Sonic's animal friends to power his robots, the Badniks. Sonic hears about all of this and gets on his merry way to catch Robotnik before it's too late. Again, a pretty simple story, but Sega just needed a mascot. They were desperate at that point. You play as Sonic, who can run really fast. I mean, that's kind of his whole thing. He can jump into a ball to destroy the previously mentioned Badniks, and crouch to perform a move called a Well, why doesn't it work? I'm pressing the button. Yeah, so just like Mario 1, the controls are a bit rough here, because unlike almost every future installment, Sonic does not have his signature spin dash. If you need to curl up into a ball to destroy a wall or something, you have to already be running and then tap down to curl up. It's a bit janky, I will admit, but hey, it's the first game. What do you expect? Overall, both of these control schemes are good, and even though they are both platformer games, Sonic and Mario still play uniquely. However, if I had to pick one to win, it'd probably be Mario 1. It's just that going back to these games, Sonic is missing his staple 2D move. Like, it's just not there. And since Mario is intended to be more simple, all of his problems here are just that his air momentum is a bit whack. That's it. No missing moves. But I don't think it's fair to outright directly compare Mario and Sonic's movesets, as they're meant for different levels and such, so talking about how each of them fits their own respective series is the way to go here. And yeah, I just feel like it's easier to suck up Mario's weird controls over the complete lack of a spin dash, so yes, Mario wins this round. Before playing the Sonic games, I never really got the hype. I mean, it's just another 2D platformer, except this time you can kind of go fast. I never really knew what made Sonic so unique until I actually played the games. And here's the thing. I do feel like I overall like playing as Mario more than I like playing as Sonic. Ironically, Mario just feels more snappy and precise to me. But that doesn't mean every Sonic game is necessarily worse than every Mario game, because Sonic's control works so well in the most unique thing about his games, the level design. Yep, moving on to round 2, the level design, and like I said, this is what Sonic exceeds in. Compared to Mario levels that are just designed to be fun, bite-sized platforming challenges, Sonic levels are meant to be real areas, places that stay in your mind, areas you're meant to explore a little. This is highlighted by the fact that in every Sonic zone, which are broken up into 3 acts in this game, there are 2 paths you can take, a top or a bottom path. So every time you play, you can decide, oh, do I want to go here or go here? This is just something not really present in Super Mario Bros. Like, the equivalent of this is just, do I want to skip half the game with the warp zones? I like the warp zones, but it doesn't have the same effect. Now, that's not to say Mario 1's levels are bad. They aren't. In fact, most of them are really good. Of course, 1-1 is a staple when defining good and intuitive level design, but most of these levels are just fun. Nothing special about any in specific, but they function at their job. They give the player an adventure. It makes them go through different worlds and areas. And they aren't as memorable as Sonic zones, but they weren't really meant to be. But every good game has a flaw somewhere. Specifically in Mario 1, a few of the ending castle levels do this pick-a-path thing where if you don't randomly guess the correct sequence of paths to walk through, the level loops around until you guess it right. This is so weird, man. Well, later versions of this game play an incorrect buzzer sound if you get the path wrong, which might actually help you realize this is a looping pattern. There's nothing here that explicitly states here that the level is actually moving. You'd probably figure it out after some point, but it might take a minute. In terms of Sonic, I'd like to quickly go over every zone in the game, as that's how they were really meant to be discussed and played. Since there are only 6 zones, each is an important part of the experience. Starting off with Green Hill Zone. This place just gives off a nice welcoming vibe to the player and is a pretty good tutorial level. Of course, it doesn't get God's blessing like Mario 1's first level does, but this is because Sonic didn't have to introduce everyone to video games. Like, people knew how to jump at this point. In 1985, they didn't know what to do with these buttons. They probably thought you could cook them. Now, yeah, Green Hill Zone is the main showcase of Sonic's speed in the game. If this level was bad, this game wouldn't have succeeded as well as it did. The game's main gimmick is that you can go fast, so it's an important part of this level. But for almost every other level in the game, that's really not the case. Zones 2 and 3, Marble and Spring Yard, are really mediocre and focus more on puzzle platforming, which doesn't mesh well with Sonic's design philosophy at all. It just creates a weird and inconsistent experience. Now, I want you to prepare yourself. Sonic fans knows what's up next, and I just want to say that this is one of the worst things humanity will ever have to deal with. What you're about to see may be sensitive to some viewers just because of how terrifying it is. Yeah, I told you it was scary. Also, Labyrinth Zone is the scum of the earth. Ah, yes, good old Labyrinth Zone, the 4th zone in the game. This introduces the player to the water mechanics of Sonic. Unlike Mario, Sonic cannot swim in water, but instead has to slowly walk across the floor of it. These traits are still retained in Sonic games now, and it isn't necessarily bad, but in Labyrinth Zone, it is necessarily bad. Extra emphasis on the airily. And the bad. Labyrinth Zone is exactly what the name describes. It's slow, tedious, and you don't know what to do half the time. This level combines those puzzles from the earlier zones, Sonic's slow movement in water, awful traps and enemy placement, and the fact that you need to find a bubble big enough to breathe in every 15 seconds so Sonic doesn't drown, to easily create the worst zone in the game, and it's not even close. This is up there for one of the worst levels in a video game like ever. The last 2 zones in the game aren't nearly as bad, especially the 5th, Starlight Zone. This is actually the only other zone you can really speed through other than Green Hill, but even then it has its problems. The game ends with Scrap Brain Zone, an area filled with machinery built by Dr. Robotnik, until you get to the 3rd act where he sends you down to another act of Labyrinth Zone, you monster! When taking both Mario 1's levels and Sonic 1's levels into account, they both have their pros and cons. I like the style of having more open areas in Sonic levels. It makes them feel more memorable, and it's just something you wouldn't really get from a Mario game. But Sonic's weird, inconsistent design philosophy just makes the game really weird to go back to. Like, first you can go fast at a level, then you can't again. Also, Labyrinth Zone exists and is the bane of every Sonic 1 replay through, so sorry Sonic 1, I gotta give Mario 1 the point. Again. But hey, now that we've actually gone through the games and beaten them, do I feel like replaying them? I've already talked about how important replayability is to a game, especially for older games on the shorter side like these two. It's what gives a game a lot of its value. If you spend 2 hours max playing through Sonic 1 and never play through it again, well, that was a waste of money, wasn't it? Overall, Super Mario Bros. Takes about an hour and a half to beat if you don't use warp zones. However, the inclusion of warp zones kind of extremely adds to its replayability. Every time you boot the game up, you can decide, do I want to warp to World 2, or 3, or 4? And then do I want to warp again to World 8 or 7? I like the choice here, especially since taking the fastest route with a decent amount of practice means you'll beat this game in like 15 minutes maximum. Seriously, I just popped this in at random times and just beat it. Like, apart from 8-3 and the stupid Hammer Brothers, it's really easy to do anytime. Like, you'll see me playing this at funerals. As for Sonic 1, it also takes about 2 hours or so to complete. What's different here is that there aren't any skips, so you have to play Lava Zone every time. However, the lack of skipping levels is sort of made up with the addition of actual collectibles. Really, the only way to 100% Super Mario Brothers was to just beat every level without warps, but Sonic introduces the Chaos Emeralds. The way you unlock these is by holding onto 50 rings until the end of a level and jumping into a special stage, and oh my god. These things are sort of like pinball machines, but they're not fun, they're not interesting, and I want to die while playing them. You have to carefully maneuver into a specific section of the map to slowly dig out the emeralds from the center, but there are exits everywhere that are really easy to fall into. If you happen to fall in one, it's done, your attempt is over. So basically, you have a maximum of 12 attempts to get all 6 Chaos Emeralds. Not only are the actual special stages difficult, keeping 50 rings until the end of a level is really nerve-wracking, and sometimes almost impossible due to this game's general mediocre level design. Not to mention that getting these emeralds doesn't even do anything. Yeah, I usually skip the emeralds in this one. And due to the previously mentioned mediocre level design in Sonic 1, compared to the sheer speed and choice you have while replaying Mario 1, I think I'm gonna have to give Mario 1 the point here again. That means it is 3-0, so it automatically is the champion. But hold on, let me talk about the game's legacy first, jeez. Let me get this straight, okay? Sonic the Hedgehog was a big deal. Compared to Super Mario, who was having all sorts of success at the time, Sonic was the cool guy. He was what all the sick and rad 90s kids wanted to play on the Sega Genesis. Nintendo is for kids, after all. Sonic, of course, saw many sequels come out of the game's success. I mean, the character got so popular that he got a balloon in the 1993 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It was destroyed by a tree and injured a police officer and a 10-year-old girl, but hey, Mario's too kiddie to do that. However, Super Mario Bros. was, like, it was, okay? It led to how big the gaming industry has gotten to today. It taught tens of thousands of people what video games were about, and that they could genuinely be a unique form of entertainment. It was a massive jump from whatever Atari, Coleco, and other home console developers were doing at the time. Mario has been in movies, books, shows, music, posters, buildings, targets, everything that exists. Mario has probably been involved with it somehow. I mean, with where Disney is going now, it's no question that Mario is a more popular character than Mickey Mouse himself. Now, Sonic is pretty widespread too. He's had many movies, shows, and other things I did list for Mario, but I think the most important thing Sonic showed at the time was that Nintendo could be competed with. Mainly because of Super Mario Bros., Nintendo had an unstoppable grasp on the video game market in the late 80s, and it was Sonic that made it, well, stoppable. But it's just a fact that Sonic is not as widespread of a character as Mario. He's not as simple, not as friendly. Heck, he's not even a big hit in Japan very much, especially compared to Mario. I mean, ask a Japanese rat if it knows who Mario is, and it's gonna say yes. So yeah, I'm gonna have to give the final legacy point to Super Mario Bros. I know it's a bit crazy to completely swept Sonic 1 in terms of points. I mean, it is 4-0, but that doesn't mean Sonic 1 is necessarily a bad game. It's just that one portion of the game, and its weird fluctuating design philosophy that makes it really weird to go back to, and just not as simple and fun as it is to go back to Mario 1. But Sonic still got another chance to redeem, because it's time for another matchup. Super Mario Bros. 2, released on the NES in 1988, versus Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released on the Sega Genesis in 1992, just 4 years after. Once again, I think it's important to start with the context in each of these games before we get into Control. So, Super Mario Bros. 2 follows the story of Mario, Luigi, Princess Toadstool, and Toad, who all had the same dream in which they went into a cave with a large staircase and learned about a magical world called Subcon that is cursed due to the fault of an evil frog king, Wart. The gang goes on a picnic only to discover that the same cave from their dreams is actually real, and they go through the door at the top of the staircase and are transported to Subcon. I will admit this is much better than Mario 1's story, and is a nice breath of fresh air compared to almost every other 2D Mario where it's just that Peach is kidnapped. However, now is the moment for me to mention that this does not feel like a sequel to Mario 1. The same team developed this game, but as you know, it wasn't for the purpose of being a Mario game. But because the Japanese sequel to Mario 1 gave everyone an aneurysm while playing, they had to release an alternative game before people got too hungry for more Mario. But yeah, honestly, the biggest similarities in this game is that you can run and jump like in Mario 1. At that point, you might as well just call Kirby's Epic Yarn Mario 2. Instead of keeping Mario's Player's iconic ability to stomp on his enemies, you instead have to jump onto them and pick them up. You can pick up lots of things in this game, as well as the option to throw them. I mean, that's the whole gimmick this time around. As for Sonic 2, the story here is almost identical to the first game. Dr. Robotnik once again tries to obtain the Chaos Emeralds, which there are 7 of instead of 6 like in the last game. He does this to power his weapon of mass destruction, the Death Egg, and yada yada yada. Sonic just has to stop him. However, to shake things up, Sonic meets a new friend named Miles Per. A pun on Miles Per Hour. Great. I have a pun in my name too. Get it? Anyways, real legends know that his nickname is just Tails. He's a fox with 2 tails that can move basically just as fast as Sonic. So what's the point of Sonic being the fastest creature alive? Anyways, Tails adds things to the gameplay. Basically, he's just a buddy who does random shenanigans while following Sonic. You can't use him to fly over the level design though, that wasn't in the original version of Sonic 2. However, there is one more thing about him that's pretty cool. If a player gets stuck on a hill for too long, Tails actually teaches you that yes, if you press the jump button while crouching, you can finally do the spin dash. Yes! This makes gameplay so much better in this game. You can just gain a giant boost of speed at any time. This extremely helps Sonic 2 feel so much more exciting than Sonic 1, honestly. Going back to this game control-wise is much easier because of this move. It's crazy how much one addition can really be a game changer, but how does this compare to Super Mario Bros. 2? Well, I already talked about how the player controls differently than the first game, but my actual thoughts on this gameplay are a bit mixed, I have to be honest. This just doesn't feel right to be in a Mario game, and I get it's unique and stuff, but I would much rather play a Mario game with real Mario controls. Either way, what is here feels quite fine. Everything is pretty precise and snappy in this game, and the arrow meta problems from Mario 1 are non-existent here. But since we're talking about how each of these games' control schemes work in their respective series, I don't think Mario 2's is a very good job here. Again, I get it's unique, and I can respect that, but it's such a drastic shift in gameplay compared to anything else in the trilogy that I can't really get behind. So I'm gonna have to give the point to Sonic 2 here. It does a much better job at expanding on the original, and fixing all the problems that felt underbaked in Sonic 1, something a sequel should do. Well, how is the level design in each of these games? Well, just like in its gameplay, Mario 2 mixes up things quite a bit here. In Mario 1, every level was a side-scroller, and because of hardware limitations, the screen couldn't be scrolled backwards. However, by the time Mario 2 rolled around, NES coding was more optimized, so not only could side-scrolling sections go backwards as well, but vertical levels and areas were very common in this game. That's pretty neat, I will admit. As for the level design, there isn't anything deeply philosophical about it like Mario 1, but it gets the job done. Most levels here are pretty solid, however, there are times where the level design is a bit too unfair for me. Maybe I'm just bad at this game, which I am, but a lot of these levels I do not find pretty solid. In fact, I would call them not good, especially this stupid pick-a-pipe level. It's just a bunch of trial and error to figure out which pot you can go down in order to find the key. Oh, this sucks. So, okay, not a great start for Mario 2. However, Sonic 1 had not spectacular level design either, so maybe Sonic 2 is just like that. Let's go through each zone in this game to see what's going on. The first zone, Emerald Hill, is another pretty good beginning area. It's basically Green Hill Zone 2, that's all, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I'd say it's actually quite good. It introduces the player to the game very well, and I'd say that it goes with the whole gotta go fast idea and sticks with it more than Green Hill ever did. What makes things better here is that every zone only has 2 acts. That is so much nicer, and unlike Sonic 1 where zones got very stale, Sonic 2 zones never really overstay their welcome. This is a great addition. What's another welcome addition is that the second zone isn't a sin. Welcome to Chemical Plant Zone, the level that I think, more than any other zone in Sonic 2, makes a point. The spectacular art on screen, the upbeat music, and the reassurance that you only have 2 acts to play through gives me a much more welcoming atmosphere than Sonic 1's second zone ever did. The fact that the second level is also a good zone, and more importantly allows Sonic to reach his fullest, speediest potential, spits in the face of Marble Zone and foreshadows that honestly, the rest of the game is basically gonna be just like this. This game has non-stop hits, man. Aquatic Ruin Zone is a water zone. Yes, a bit lame, but you can beat it without even entering the water. How cool is that? This is followed up by Casino Night Zone, a vibrant and groovy area all based around slot machines and pinball-like level design. And then we have Hilltop Zone, a bit more generic, but takes place in the sky and throughout several caves with rising lava in them. You have to go pretty fast to avoid the lava here, and there are these fun seesaw objects throughout the level that are actually ripped straight from Sonic 1's his 5th zone. Funny how that works out. Next, we move on to Mystic Cave Zone, which right off the bat, easily the best music in the game. However, I must say that this is when the game starts to slow down a bit. Yeah, I mean, this is a fine level. It has these hanging switch gimmicks where you just gotta grab them to open up pathways, but yeah, not much really going on here. I would really just say that this is sort of a mid-level and a sea of good levels. However, in the 2013 mobile port of the game, they added the scrapped Hidden Palace Zone here. Basically, in the Genesis version of Sonic 2, there was this pit here which just killed you, but now if you fall into it, you unlock Hidden Palace Zone. It's just one act, but I mean, that's cool. It's nice as well because on my first playthrough I accidentally found this place, and if I were playing on Genesis I would have just immediately died. The next zone, Oil Ocean, is another instance of slower gameplay. There's nothing much that stands out to me in this level. The main thing that does is the fact that I consistently get lost. Like almost every time I play this, there is one part where I just don't know what I'm doing. I sort of dread this on replaythroughs, I've got to be honest. Metropolis Zone is the last full zone in the game. You'll see why I say that in a minute. Most people don't like it. I agree. Right off the bat, this enemy placement is atrocious. Like, these stupid crabs all over the place, these mantises, or manti, sorry, that throw sharp boomerang-looking things at you, and the range on these things are insane. And, of course, the infamous star enemies that shoot out spikes in these screw sections. Oh, the screw gimmick. I hate this gimmick. Not only is it just not fun to have these slowly reach the top, but the hitbox for actually activating this action is really weird to me. Like, you have to be going to the exact middle of these screws for it to work. And I sometimes just find myself accidentally jumping off while avoiding the dumb star enemies. This combined with the fact that you should remember the Sonic devs don't love you or value your life, and that there's 3 acts in this stage, just creates, honestly, a pretty bad level and a pretty bad experience. It's not nearly as bad as Labyrinth Zone, but this is the main thing I am not looking forward to when playing a replaythrough. I know I said that about Oil Ocean Zone, but I loathe this one more. After completing Metropolis, Sonic and Tails use their trusty plane, the Tornado, in order to chase Robotnik's Wing Fortress, the aircraft that he uses to get himself to space, where his previously mentioned Death Egg is located. It takes a minute to catch up to Robotnik though, so the game makes an act out of this sky chase here. Guess what it's called? This has weird controls. You can kinda move like a regular level, but you also have to be remembering to control the plane vertically. I don't know, it's weird and just makes for a pretty unfun 2-minute auto-scroller. Once the duo does make it to the Wing Fortress, the Tornado gets shot down, meaning that only Sonic can traverse through this place alone. This is another one-act area called Wing Fortress Zone, and it's okay. Not much stands out here once again. The main point of it is to advance the story, and it does a good job at that. It creates an epic atmosphere, but that's all it really is. It's just a plot device disguised as a zone. There were so many scrapped zones in this game. Why'd they create Sky Chase and Wing Fortress instead of things like Wood Zone, Blue Lake Zone, Genocide City Zone? Anyways, after beating this act, it's revealed Tails was able to fix the tornado just in time, so he just barely flies Sonic towards Robotnik's launching spaceship, and Sonic is able to hop onto the side and grab on. Oh my god, Sonic, I didn't know you were that strong. Robotnik docks his ship into the Death Egg, and now it's time for the final battle. The final boss here is okay. It's made much worse because this area gives you no rings. Its hitboxes are also kind of jank as Robotnik's big robot here has spiked arms and all, but whatever. The point I'm trying to make here is that Sonic 2's levels, over time, start to get worse and worse, and then it just sort of ends. It's very anticlimactic. It tries to be epic and cool, but it sort of fails. However, compared to Sonic 1, this has so many more fun and memorable moments in it. Yeah, it has its bad areas, but overall, I'd say it's a pretty fun time. It's definitely better than Sonic 1, and it definitely has more intuitive level design than Mario 2. So I'm gonna have to give Sonic 2 the point again, meaning that it is 2-0. Next, we move on to the replayability point. This should be a breath of fresh air. Things got a little Sonic focus there for a bit. Super Mario Bros. 2 has a decent amount of replayability. The game has 20 levels, 12 less than Mario 1, but that's because each level is much longer. There aren't any collectibles to nab in this game, but similar to Mario 1, there are several warps to be found here. In most levels throughout the game, there are these potions that if you throw, a door spawns and you can go through it to briefly enter the world of subspace. Normally, you could get some coins from plucking plants, and occasionally a mushroom if you throw the potion in the right place. But in some levels, there are these pots that you can enter in subspace, and when you do, they warp you to later worlds. There are several of these warps as well, and of course, all are optional. This ends up creating that choice aspect in replaythroughs like in Mario 1. This is especially good because, like I said, some later levels get a bit too rough, so being able to skip most of them is a good addition. But those same later levels sort of hurt Mario 2 in replayability for me as well. I just don't find a lot of these levels to be fun, like at all. They frustrate me, and it's just a much rarer occurrence that I'm gonna go back to play Super Mario Bros. 2 compared to literally any other game in the trilogy. I just don't think that reusing Doki Doki Panic, that was so different from a Mario game, as a sequel, was a great call. It just results in mediocre replayability scores for me, I've gotta be honest. Sonic 2, on the other hand, I feel benefits in all ways Sonic 1 did in replayability. It has collectibles, and it's a short game. Again, look at that. Sonic 2 takes what Sonic 1 did in almost every aspect and makes it better. Take notes, Super Mario Bros. 2. The collectibles here are the Chaos Emeralds again, and like I said, there are 7 in this entry as opposed to the 6 from the prior game. But instead of having to keep 50 rings until the end of the level, you just gotta have them until you reach a checkpoint. God, that's so much better. Just because of that, I'm donating to all checkpoints. Take notes, Super Mario Bros. 2. Anyways, the actual special stages take place on these 3D like half pipes, where you can move around to collect rings and avoid bombs. To get an emerald, you have to make it past 3 rounds of collecting enough rings, but you must dodge those bombs, man. Each hit takes like 10 rings from you. These are actually pretty hard, especially the later levels, but even the first few are a challenge. Unfortunately, they rely a lot on memorization because the render distance on this isn't great as it was on the Genesis, but I'm still pretty impressed by these graphics. Oh, and look, Tails can be here too. Yeah, if you're going for all the emeralds, it's practically impossible to win at the later stages because Tails trails behind you and copies your movements on a delay. So he will always end up getting hit by the bombs. It's really annoying. But I'm sure you're asking the age-old question. What do the Chaos Emeralds do? Well, as we know, they did nothing in the first game, but when you get all 7 here, Sonic can become Super Sonic. Basically, you can activate Super Sonic at any time in any level as long as you have 50 rings. But if you lose a ring every second while he's activated, you can lose your supersonic powers when your ring count hits 0. However, with Supersonic, you get to become invincible, and if you're good enough to keep your ring counter in check for a while, you can be invincible for entire acts at times. It's pretty fun, and what adds to this whole Emerald system is that there's potential to get this so early on. Like I said, you get a chance on a special stage at every checkpoint. However, I will say that playing with Tails on Genesis is too challenging for me, so I usually skip it if I'm playing on original hardware. But I am playing on the Sonic Origins version most of the time. Say what you will about Sonic Origins, but I got it for like $10 on sale, so I thought it was a pretty good deal. This increases the game's draw distance, and you also have an option to play the game without Tails, so I usually do that here. On top of all that Supersonic stuff, the sheer quality of most of the game and the fact it only has like 20 acts makes it really fun to see if you can rush through the game in one sitting. It's really at that perfect length that makes it so fun to keep trying over and over again. Like, check my calendar, every Tuesday there is almost certainly marked as Sonic Tuesday. Yeah, I've gotta be honest, there's a clear winner here. Don't get me wrong, I like replaying Mario 2's first level. Everything else just makes me frustrated, annoyed, bored, and just, it's super weird. It's not a great Mario game in my opinion, and it doesn't really keep me coming back. However, Sonic 2 has that perfect amount of content in it that makes it so intriguing to see how fast you can beat it time and time again. I'm gonna have to give Sonic 2 the replayability point here, meaning that it is 3-0, so it is automatically the champion. Oh, hold on, let me talk about the game's legacy first, jeez. It's no doubt that both of these games heavily affected their series. As for Sonic 2, it improved on almost everything the first game did. It really just made everything so much more solid. This was a monumental release for Sega and really just the gaming industry as a whole. With Sonic 1, Sega was kinda just hoping and praying it would be a success because they needed that new mascot, but with Sonic 2, they already knew Sonic was huge and the marketing reflected that. What's most interesting to me is that the release schedule for Sonic 2 was actually something sort of unheard of at the time. The game released within the same week for all 3 regions, with Japan being the only outlier, which had Sonic 2 released 3 days ahead of the North American and PAL releases, which came out on November 24th, 1992. This game was another huge factor that helped Sega stay in the 90s console wars, as this was definitely their biggest game in 1992. Along with the fact that Sonic 2 still receives critical acclaim to this day, I mean, look at how I just praised it, it's obvious this game left a huge legacy on the Sonic series and gaming as a whole. On Super Mario Bros. 2's side of things, it's a bit weird as the Mario sequel situation got a bit wacky in Japan. Because this Mario 2 was focused for Western audiences, as they couldn't release their Mario 2 or everyone in the Americas would burn alive, I think, only the West got this title for a while. It was of such little focus to Nintendo that not only did it release in North America only a matter of weeks before Mario 3 did in Japan, rumors of Super Mario Bros. 4 were already surfacing in the US. Oh my god. Mario 2 would end up being another hit to the general audience and top topped the NES charts for over a year straight. I may not like it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't important to the Mario series as a whole. This introduced the playable princess and her floaty attributes, as well as Toad and his fast running. This would later be seen in games like Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario Run. Also, flagship enemies in the series were introduced here. Bob-ombs, Pokies, Birdo, heck, Shy Guy was introduced in this game. If this game never came into fruition, then I think half the people I know would throw a fit. Everyone loves Shy Guy. It's insane that all of these assets originally made for Doki Doki Panic ended up being staples of the Mario series. Funny enough, this version of Mario 2 introduced so much more than the original version of Mario 2 ever did. Heck, I'd even argue that this game might have been more integral to the Mario series than Sonic 2 was to the Sonic series. That's a big statement, so let me explain. I know Sonic 2 did the whole consistent in every region release date thing. It definitely introduced many things to the Sonic series. That is true, and while that's cool and all, I already explained how much Mario 2 added to the Mario series. Plus, Mario 2, most of all, kept Mario popular during the NES era, as the gap between Mario 1 and Mario 3 would eventually become 5 years long in North America, which is a bit of a time to wait. With Mario 2 filling in that gap, basically being smack in the middle, it's no-brainer that Mario 3 ended up also being the success it was. But that's for later. I would give the legacy point to Super Mario Bros. 2, which ultimately means Sonic the Hedgehog 2 wins this matchup 3-1. That was a lot. I would say that was definitely a more interesting matchup in my opinion, especially the legacy part there. But throughout that round, I mentioned a lot about the original Super Mario Bros. 2, which you might all know better as the Lost Levels. It's sort of the lost game in the Super Mario Bros. Trilogy. And if I was comparing the Mario Trilogy to literally any other series of 3 games, I wouldn't think much of this. But wouldn't you know it, a year after Sonic 2's release, something was in the works. And it wasn't Sonic 3. Being worked on by a completely different team, basically meant to be another Sonic 2, but for Sega's new Genesis add-on, the Sega CD, Sega released Sonic CD in 1993. Just like the Lost Levels, I'd consider this to be the lost sequel of the Sonic trilogy. Lost Levels definitely deserves that title more, but it still works. Because of this, I thought, hey, literally why not? Why don't we do a quick bonus round comparing Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels to Sonic CD? Now, if you're a regular person, you might be thinking, this matchup is gonna go fairly quickly. Well, let's just say you're going to be walking out of here finding me to be quite unique. Let's start with the Lost Levels, shall we? The story here is the same as Mario 1. The princess has been kidnapped by Bowser, and you gotta go save her. Pretty simple once again. In terms of gameplay, it's also basically the same as Mario 1. In fact, everything here is basically the same as Mario 1. This game came out just a year after Mario 1, so it reuses almost every asset from that game. The only thing different about the controls here is that you bounce much higher when jumping off an enemy. This subtle difference makes the game even worse to come back to. On top of the reasons I listed for Mario 1, you'd likely always play Mario 1 and then the Lost Levels right after if you ever chose to replay it. But when these jumping physics is the only gameplay tweak the Lost Levels has, when literally everything else about the gameplay is the same, it just makes it feel so out of the ordinary and random. I don't like this. It just makes playing these games awkward. I'd say this does an even worse job at being a sequel compared to Mario 2 in the US. The Lost Levels win here is not looking too hot. So what's even up with Sonic CD? Well, this takes place either before or after Sonic 2, literally who cares. Basically, Sonic CD starts out with a fully hand-drawn animated cutscene of Sonic, once again, going to stop Robotnik, who is trying to take over the Little Planet this time. Yeah, that's its name. Robotnik has also got another set of stones this time around, called the Time Stones. There are also 7 of these unlocked through beating special stages, just like Sonic 2, but I'll get into those later. Just like Lost Levels, however, a lot of the assets here look the same as in the first Sonic game. Sonic sprites aren't even different here, and they aren't very unique in Sonic 2 either, but at least there's something going on there. Heck, even the HUD and checkpoints aren't different than how they appeared in Sonic 1. No! And I only point this out because Sonic 2 did tweak them slightly. Anyways, the controls here are very similar to Sonic 2. In fact, there is a spin dash, but like, barely. It's like a knockoff version. I mean, look at this. In addition, Sonic CD has basically got another spin dash, except it looks a bit cooler and you hold up this time. This is called the Super Peel Out, and to be fair, Sonic isn't rolling during this one, but just tap down after you accelerate. Like, if you do that, it's basically just the same as the spin dash. Technically, Sonic CD's controls are better than Sonic 1's, whereas the Lost Levels are worse simply because there's a difference in control between Lost Levels and 1. There should not be. They look the exact same, So I'll give Sonic CD the point here, I guess. That means it's 1-0. But this is where things get interesting. Which of these games has a superior level design? Well, it's called Lost Levels for a reason. The level design in this game is why it stayed in Japan for so long. Like, seriously, this game is infamous for its unfair level design. The Lost Levels has power-ups that hurt you. Warp zones that either force you to die or warp back several worlds. It has the same stupid looping level sections that Mario 1 had, but in random parts of levels as well. It has invisible blocks, faster piranha plants, cruel and unusual punishment, 12 years in prison. I would be lying if I said this game didn't suck. I swear to God, I am never in any universe playing this game without rewinds, ever. It is such a bad game. It spits on everything the original Super Mario Bros. Stood for, and is an atrocious sequel. I don't care how bad or good Sonic CD's level design is, I'm automatically giving it the point. That's how bad this is. And that's all I have to say about it. There's not like a specific level that's actually bearable. Nope, this is the game. You can sum it up by literally saying that every level feels like it's from Super Mario Maker. Not to mention that to unlock 4 special worlds, you gotta play through the game 8 times. Yeah, no thanks, Lost Levels. Get out of my face. How's about we move on to Sonic CD, shall we? Instead of going for a linear approach, the Sonic team this time around decided to focus more on the exploration and openness of Sonic zones, basing the whole game around this concept. And to add more depth onto this idea, they added past and future versions to each zone. Basically, if Sonic stays at top speed for like 5 seconds after passing one of these signs, he can time travel and explore the zone like it was in that time period. If you get rid of all of Robotnik's robot generators in the past of a zone, you create a good future for that zone. Definitely an interesting mechanic, and is very unique compared to how the other Sonic games approach things. Let's see how all 7 zones in this game use this mechanic to their advantage. Now, I don't believe that in really any of my discussions I've said something super controversial before. Like, I said I like Dig Dug, that's really it. However, I don't care, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I'm not going to lie, and I am not going to go easy on this game. Sonic CD is my least favorite game that I have ever played. It doesn't necessarily mean it's actually the worst game I've ever played, but favorite-wise, I hate this game. First, let me start with my opinion on the central theme of this game, the exploration. I hate it, man. There's nothing that makes me want to explore these zones at all. All of them visually are just geometry, just random shapes. Why would I want to see any past or future of them at all? Not to mention that every past and future are basically the same. The past is, oh, less robots. The bad future is, oh, more robots and darker colors. And the good future is, oh, less robots. I never want to explore these levels nor see their different time periods. It's all the same. I don't care if there are robot generators to destroy. Finding one tiny object in these unnecessarily expensive levels is not fun to do, especially when I don't care. Listen, at the beginning of my playthrough, I tried to get the good futures. I really did. And for the first 2 zones, Palm Tree Panic and Collision Chaos, it went okay. Like, they were fine. But Tidal Tempest, man. Tidal Tempest is this game's water zone because you just gotta have them. And this is atrocious. This zone starts the trend where it's almost impossible to actually find a past sign and be able to get to top speed for like 5 years to travel back in time. It's so hard, and it's very annoying that the level design isn't designed around helping you achieve time travel, the main gimmick of the game, for God's sake. Some would probably say, oh, well, it's a fun challenge to figure out ways to gain top speed. No, it's not. It's practically impossible in every area of this level, and in one part, I couldn't even backtrack to the first half of the act because I couldn't get past this bogus current thing. Some zones have it so bad that the devs put specific areas to gain your speed in. Yet the level design didn't accommodate for their main gimmick, so they didn't change the level, no, but instead added this artificial piece of garbage in their level. And that's good level design, pshaw. The 4th zone, Quartz Quadrant, was very forgettable. I don't really remember anything about it, man. There was nothing special it had to offer. And then we get to Wacky Workbench. Wacky Workbench has a gimmick where the floor is bouncy, and when you hit it, it sends you all the way up to the top of the level, which is where you don't want to be. I don't know, I just found this annoying. Like, why? It's not abysmal, but it's not fun nor interesting, especially when you're trying to explore these levels. There's also Stardust Speedway, which also isn't the greatest level. The enemy placement is very bad in this level. Basically, it's easily the fastest level in the game, but who cares? Random spike balls around the level to hit you while you're going fast and can't see them. This isn't like getting punished for going fast in Marble Zone or something, because in that zone, you're not supposed to go fast. Here, in Stardust Speedway, it's intended and they punish you for it. Still though, this is easily the best zone in the game. It can be a bit fun when you act like it's a regular Sonic zone, which ironically it is. This is the closest CD gets to being a good Sonic game. Which is funny, because CD spelled backwards is DC, which stands for people usually say Stardust Speedway doesn't really belong in Sonic CD. Yeah, maybe it doesn't belong because it's actually a bearable level. And then the final zone, Metallic Madness, was just kinda lame. It wasn't super bad or noteworthy to me, but that's likely because at that point in the game, I already given up on going to the past and future because I already had the time stones, which automatically give you a good future anyways. Well, I already gave CD the point. To be fair, the levels here don't feel like they were made by trolling fans. But I hope you can kind of see my arguments here. I hate this game and I hate its level design. But comparing the Lost Levels to my literal least favorite game of all time is like comparing Stalin's corpse to Stalin himself. One is bad, but that's just because he's a dead guy. No one wants to be around a corpse. The other is actively performing the purge. Moving on to replayability, what do you think I'm gonna say here? No one just plays the Lost Levels on a whim. No one's doing that. Maybe you're doing a Mario Marathon, and unfortunately that game is part of the series, so you gotta play it, but no one in their right mind wakes up one day and says, I wanna play the Lost Levels. Now, I hate Sonic CD, obviously, but I do see how fans would like replaying the game. It has a lot of options. You could go for all the good futures, or explore the bad future, or maybe you don't choose to explore at all. That's all fine and dandy, but we also do have collectibles here to talk about, in the form of the priorly mentioned time stones. These are literally KSMOs again, and guess what? They kept the hold on to 50 rings until the end of the level thing. Yay! This means you only get 14 chances for all 7 special stages combined, which sounds better than it actually is. Trust me, this is not enough. The special stages in this game are okay. Basically, you move around on a semi-3D plane trying to destroy these UFOs within the time limit. Different UFOs give you different power-ups, like one increases speed, another gives you rings, and occasionally an extra UFO spawns in the middle, which if destroyed, it grants you extra time. This UFO can spawn infinitely many times in a round, and it's very helpful as running on water, which is very easy to do, demolishes your timer. To be honest, the first 3 or 4 of these stages are okay. They have their problems, of course, like most notably the hitboxes on the UFOs are really bad and hard to judge when you can hit them due to the weird depth perception you have while playing these stages, but they're bearable. However, the other of these stages, oh my god. The Sonic CD special stages have one of the biggest difficulty spikes I've ever seen in gaming. I'm serious. I spent over an hour on the 5th stage just because of how much harder it gets for no reason. I could see the argument of, well, learning the route of each stage is fun, but I'd say you have to learn less of a route and more so all the pretty obscure visual and sound cues the game gives you, which isn't very fun nor intuitive to do. That UFO that spawns in the middle for extra time, there's a sound cue for that. I didn't learn that until the 6th stage. Also, what is this background? Just what? Honestly, I have no idea how anyone would ever pull off an 100% run of this game without save states or retries or whatever. 14 tries for all of these stages, and it's still hard to keep 50 rings to the end of a stage anyway? Absolutely not. Nuh-uh. No way anyone did this in the 90s. I refuse to believe it. And what do you get for getting all the time stones? Well, apart from unlocking the good futures automatically, which you could just do by destroying all the robot generators in the past, you get nothing. Nothing. How do you people like this game? It takes everything bad from Sonic 1 that Sonic 2 literally went out of its way to fix, and it keeps it in. The annoying level design and enemy placement, the 3-act zones, the stupid way of entering special stages. Like, why are we doing this again, guys? Why add the time stones when they still don't give you anything? Wait, hold on, no. They give you a different end screen. So, disregard everything I said. I'm gonna give Sega a big kiss on the forehead, simply because the time stones are optional collectibles, and you have the choice while replaying to either explore or to not explore. I'm gonna give Sonic CD the point here again, which means it's 3-0. Oh my god. All of the points I gave it make sense, but I'm just a little salty about it. Last up, we got Legacy, and I've gotta say, because of the nature of Mario Lost Levels, just trying to basically be more difficult DLC, it barely added anything to the Mario series. It added Luigi's slippery and jumping physics, as you can play as him in single player now, but that's about it. This game is mainly remembered for just being really difficult. It's definitely the worst Super Mario Bros. Game to date, no doubt, but that's all it accomplished. It didn't do anything for the video game industry, unlike the other Mario games in the trilogy. In fact, it almost killed Mario. If this was sent over to the States, the series might have lost all of its popularity right then and there. Comparing this to Sonic CD, well, I'd say that this is probably the thing I can compliment Sonic CD on the most. Earlier, I was too busy ranting to mention that Amy, Rose, and Metal Sonic were introduced in this game. I feel like that in and of itself is enough to prove my point. I mean, these are some of the most iconic Sonic the Hedgehog characters out there. They've been in countless entries and are the main focus of the Sonic 4 movie. But what's more special to me about Sonic CD, and I guess this also applies to the Lost Levels as well, is just the obscurity of it. Of course, now we can play these games in Sonic Origins and NES Nintendo Classics on Nintendo Switch respectively, but back in the day, not many people played most of these games. They were just Japanese exclusives. Hence, in the rare instance they were re-released, it gave that package a huge portion of its value. As for the Lost Levels, that was made a bit easier and remade like Mario 1 for Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, and gave it a lot of its worth. It was a new Super Mario Bros. Game, one marketed to be very difficult, but it didn't destroy Mario then and there in that instance because you actually had unlimited continues throughout the game, and the obscurity of it made it cool. Same thing for Sonic CD and the Sonic Gems collection released on the GameCube in 2005. I mean, the cover is Sonic CD related, and the other two games in this package are basically worthless, being Sonic the Fighters and Sonic R. Okay, but the reason you get this was to actually play Sonic CD on a console that was actually popular. Oh, never mind, I guess. Obviously, I'm gonna have to give Sonic CD the legacy point here, allowing it to win 4-0. Look, I'm not happy about it. I obviously have a lot of problems with Sonic CD, but I kind of understand in theory why the people who like it do like it. Plus, it's just being compared to one of the worst video games of all time, so kind of wins by default. But that concludes the bonus round, and that concludes this part of the discussion. Yes, there are still the third installments in each of these trilogies to cover, but these are so much grander in scale that I feel like if I talked about them here, they would easily take up the most time, so I hope you can kind of understand why I'm doing them in a separate part. But as for these sets of 2.5 games, Mario and Sonic are pretty even at the moment. Mario 1 absolutely demolished Sonic 1. Sonic 2 was definitely the better game compared to Mario 2, and as for the Lost Levels in CD, they're not part of the main trilogy. I mean, CD won, but not in my heart. But hey, this neck-and-neck competition has got me pretty excited to finish up this discussion. I really don't know who's gonna come out on top. Like, I honestly have no idea. As for now, there's actively people outside trying to break into my house and kill me.